So this is one of my favorite times every year when we get to plan our year and we get to just really reflect and think back what went well, what didn't go well, get on the same page as a couple for the upcoming year. And as we know, I mean, this year was very obvious of this, but you just don't know what's going to happen in a year. Obviously, the Lord is sovereign in all of these things, but I do really feel like I love that verse that man plans his way and the Lord directs his steps. And so there is an element of planning that is helpful going into the new year. And Elisha and I have been planning our years together ever since we got married. It's something that we don't set New Year's resolutions on our own. It's something we've always talked through as a couple. And so it's just fun, I think, to hear the inside and outs of what's going on through each other's heads and what we're going to be united on. And it's crazy looking back how, even though there's so many unforeseen circumstances in a year, how we hit so many of the things we aim for at the beginning of the year with how we plan. So anyways, we're going to dive into that right now. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Give it a thumbs up if you do. Thank you again for all your ratings and reviews and for being with us this year. We are so blessed by our listeners. So thank you for being here.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
As you already said, Katie, not only do we love doing the planning of the upcoming year, it is always remarkable to look back and to actually consider what was accomplished that we had written down this time last year. It's so easy to lose sight of that when you are, whether it's making goals or just kind of setting a general direction you want to go in. We're so prone to forgetting when we do that. And because it's not like problems go away. They never go away. Pain points never go away. The need for growth, the desire for growth should never go away. And as we've talked about, the horizon is always beyond us, right? We're never able to reach it. And so unless you force yourself to look back and to acknowledge the things that you've been able to accomplish because of the Lord's graciousness in our life and his provision, then actually you don't have ammunition, so to speak. I don't know if ammunition is the right word, or you don't have like a substance on which to, or a motivation, I should say. You don't have the motivation to keep planning and to think about what you want your home to look like, family culture to be, and then your personal goals. Like who do I want to be as a person 1 year from now? Because between now and this time next year, unless you are intentional about revisiting what it is that you set out to accomplish, you're going to lose sight of it. Things are going to come in and they're going to disrupt your year, whether that's sickness, whether it's a job change, whether it's I even think of, 2020 was such a big year, everybody was making their plans that year. And then that year was different than how anybody could have ever predicted. And yet, and this is nuts, that year was different. We were still glad we made goals that year, because by the end of 2020, we were like, what's nuts is that, the circumstances were bizarre, but we were able to know what our personal North Stars were, or what the North Star was for our home. And so it can be really grounding, because you know that, 2025 could be full of crazy world events, local events, personal crisis, personal health crisis, personal financial or, career crisis, like that, as a potential at the beginning of every year. And so getting a North Star, so to speak, for your family is actually grounding, because it's the thing that you can keep pointing to in the midst of all those I got this, ready? Tumultuous times.
I think there's no R. It's just tumultuous.
You're kidding.
No, tumultuous.
Tumultuous? I thought it was
no
like
R.
turmoil.
Well, that would be a different word than what I've heard, but
turmoil, tumultuous. Oh, wow.
Tumultuous is
that sounded
no
crazy.
R. But,
Okay.
but I know, it's like, should we look it up? No, anyway, so all that being said, though, we don't set New Year's resolutions because those, first of all, have like a 90% fail rate. So if you want to win at life, why would you set yourself up to fail? And secondly, we've just found that, like Elisha said, that North Star, that like This is the feel we're going for as a family. These are the overall outcomes we want to move toward as a family. It sounds kind of vague, but we achieve so much more this way than saying by this date, like we don't set what are those goals? Smart goals.
Yeah, smart goals.
Yeah, smart goals when it comes to our year. Basically, we don't have a timeline, a deadline, exactly what it's going to be, exactly what it's going to look like, because we've just found we would rather make it 80% in the direction towards where we wanted to be headed this year and end up 80% ahead of where we were when we started the year than have it be a big, well, we failed at hitting the goal.
Right. I mean, the SMART goals, was that specific, measurable, attainable?
So far, so good.
Whatever. Man, yeah, we should probably know what those all are.
Timely. Or time specific.
Yeah, time sensitive, time specific, wonder what the R is. Anyways, those can be helpful if you're good at acknowledging progress and not getting caught up with your lack of perfection, which is an area that I think we've both grown in, and anybody can grow in that area. But you are so right. A general direction is usually what we talk about for our family. And this, we've talked about dream boards before. We do enjoy making both Katie and I make our own dream board, but they're usually very aligned. And it's like, basically, we come to the conclusion of what we want for our family, and then I find photos for what inspires me in those directions, and Katie finds photos for what inspires you in those directions. We make our own dream boards, and it is fun considering even some of the photos that are coming to mind right now, even though my dream board's not right in front of me. They were just a family in a living room, right? It was an old, like, Norman Rockwell style. I don't know if it was an actual Norman Rockwell piece, but it was that feeling of a family in a living room, kids on the floor in front of the fireplace reading books, the dad with a child on his lap, one of the kids playing an instrument, the mom sitting there, enjoying everybody's company. And it looked like such a rich family, carefree, loving time. And I was like, I want that. And I didn't know specifically what that was going to look like. I had some ideas, like, okay, probably family music, probably family reading time, probably family games. I mean, just that right there is probably what I had in mind. And sure enough, when I look back over this year, we had more of those, Norman Rockwell moments, so to speak, than ever before in our life. And I think it was really nice to reflect on that picture, that photo that I'd put on my dream board. And to be able to create that moment in the evening with our family, it was really rewarding to be like, that's right, we set out to do this, and now we're experiencing it.
Yeah, we didn't know it was going to look like being around an open fire outside in the summer. It was going to be in the tent by candlelight. Like all those things varied. What we did in our evening routine varied. I think I look back and laugh, and I'm like, be careful what you put on your board, because I put a big white barn on our board. We both did that. It's kind of sore subject, but we do have a big plywood barn currently. Soon
to be a white barn.
Again, it's one of those things where it's like move the needle toward that. Put a Rhodesian Ridgeback on the board.
Yep.
Have a Rhodesian Ridgeback. There were things like swimming lessons and little kids practicing the fiddle. And I didn't know how that was going to look, but it was really fun. The competitions we went to and the 6 Songs of Summer Challenge and different stuff that came up. And so again, it wasn't saying like, I want the kids to go to 5 fiddle competitions and these are what they are and all these things. It was just kind of like, family music. So anyways, it is really fun to see how many of those things we saw fruition in, even though the circumstances changed, like the whole developing the property, designing a home, all those things were on the dream board. Moving into the tent wasn't, which was a big part of our year. Yeah. But all those things happened through that decision.
Right, going that direction.
Yes. So anyways, how we do this really practically is we start every end of year kind of brainstorming session, like Elisha said, looking backwards. And so we get out our old calendar from the year where we've made, we get out our individual calendars and we get out our main family calendar and look over what did we commit to? What did we do? What trips did we go on? Who did we see? Where did our time go? Because there's going to be a few things that stick out to you where you're like, oh, I know we did this trip. I know we did this. And then there's going to be a ton of little things that you don't realize. Oh yeah. Like we did swim lessons for 2 weeks every single day, for a couple hours a day during June. And like, I'd totally forgotten that was the commitment that we put towards swim lessons, And so it's kind of like when these things come up this next year, are we going to say, absolutely, we want more of this, or that was not a clear win for our family? So we start by just writing down all of the activities that we put our time and money into, both Elisha and me personally, and then as a family.
Yeah, so that includes trips. It includes anything that made it on the calendar. And so having people over for dinner, going to people's homes for dinner, going to special events in town, going to family reunions, and I even think of like online things that we did that would make it onto the calendar. Basically anything that had a deadline that would go on the calendar. It's really nice to have that documented because like you said, there's going to be a dozen things that really stick out or maybe less. There might be, between 6 or 12 things that really stand out in your year where you're like, well, what'd you do this last year? And you think of some highlights and some lowlights. But then when you actually pull out your calendar and you're like, no way, that was in January when we went to when I went to coach, there's like a photo of me and your dad and Adam, or I guess that was February. I was like, no way, that was this year. I was down in Santa Monica at coach. And then there's a photo of us with Lucy, going to Shenyang. And you're like, we did that this year? I'm like, that's right. That was March of this year. And it kind of slipped our mind. It felt just kind of like it was in it's not that we forgot about doing the thing. We just didn't realize that was this year. And so it's really good to, I think, acknowledge that, okay, there's going to be a whole new set of opportunities like this, or most likely probably more. And when you're able to go back and score these things kind of on a united front, then it makes it way easier. And when you have that North Star, like I said, or North Stars to go towards as a home, it gives you a lot more criteria, from which you can make decisions, and you can have that filter.
Yeah. So after we inventory all the activities, then we do go through and use this old thing that I feel like has been around forever, which is either, is it a absolute yes, or is it a no? Like, was it a very clear win, or was it or if not, it is a no?
Yes.
And I think it has to be that way. Like, oh, I am so excited to do that again. Or otherwise, it's got to be a no, because there are so many things where you go, I don't know.
Yep.
And so we have to remind each other, like, no, that's not a good answer.
Count. That's right.
Yeah.
And some of the things by nature are a one and done, and you know that.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that was a one-off event. What a fun memory, but we're not going to do that again, and it's not going to present itself necessarily as an opportunity.
But it's still fun to rank it.
No doubt.
Because the opportunities like that will come again.
Yes, that's a good point.
So we have maybe like 5 things we committed to this year that were one and dones, but we're still ranking them as, okay, if another opportunity comes around like that,
good point.
Are we saying absolutely yes? Or do we have to bow out? Because it's going to be really tempting to be like, it could be a win on some fronts. So you got to remember that feeling of how it felt to actually follow through on that commitment the last time around.
Yes, that's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah. And then it is fun, like you said, to be as, and this is the time to be as vigilant as you can be, because things are going to, and when I say now's the time, pull out the calendar and go through it, for some of those repeat events, because there are some events that are by nature, they're just an annual thing. And so you say, okay, what are we going to do with this event? Is this an absolute yes? If not, it's a no. And then you have to do that through a rank. Like I said, you've got to have your family's own criteria, because our value system, there are some things that take precedence over just like personal enjoyment of something.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
You'd be like, that was like the kids loved that. That was an absolute win because of how much they got out of it. Or, we value our extended family. Like, boy, that was such a rich family time, such an encouraging time with family. That makes it an absolute yes, even if it wasn't like Katie and I were like, that was the highlight of our year personally, we've got criteria that goes beyond that.
Yeah. And so then once we've done those two things, and it's so helpful to do this as a couple because sometimes your rankings aren't the same for something. And so it's really good to be on the same page ahead of time before it comes around next year. And you can avoid a lot of potential conflict if you've already talked about this before. We've gotten more and more on the same page with this stuff. And then and then we write down some things that are going to be absolute hard no's in the next year. And these are the hardest things to do in the moment because one or the other of us feel some kind of obligatory commitment to the people, the event, whatever the case may be, or we don't want to let whoever it is or whatever it is down. Or, it reminds me of the silver chair where it's like this time next year, I'm going to be in the silver chair and, the Narnian silver chair. And I need to remind myself while I'm clear-headed right now, we have to commit to this because once I start feeling these emotions and these pressures, I'm going to want to say yes. Mm-hmm. And there's almost something like that every single year that either we feel as a couple or one of us feels where we have to commit to each other at the beginning of the year. When this comes around, it might be really hard, but I'm going to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, that applies to many areas of life. But as far as saying yes, it is challenging. Katie and I are excitable. We're excitable people. And we have the tendency, especially with in-person events, to think that is the most important thing in the world when we're a part of that event. And because that's the nature of like energy and just like an environment it can be intoxicating. And that's good. I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's like really fun.
It could really spur you in the direction that you want to go if it's an event that's doing that.
But when we were going through, it's funny going through the calendar and, the dozen kind of like big events that we went to this year, I can vividly remember being there thinking, I want to devote my life to this. Basically thinking like, how do we get more of this? This is what I want to partner with these people putting this event on. I want to invest in this. I want to, come alongside and support them in some way because this is incredible. And I felt that at like every live event every single live event we went to, because that's the power of an event. And then you get away from it, the emotion subsides, and you're able to have a bit more objectivity and say, wait a second, what's the direction for our family? Because we know that what our family is called to is different than what, our listeners' families are called to. It's going to look different. And the more clarity you can have in regards to what is best for your family and the direction the Lord's leading you in, then you are able to, without emotion, say in those times of, more objectivity and less emotion, say this isn't right. And excuse me, it is so empowering to have your own family vision because you get caught up with the masses, and it's not that you aren't busy doing stuff. That's the problem, is that you're too busy because of the nature of entertainment and of marketing and marketing dollars really. There will always be something for you to be excited about, especially the way algorithms work. Like you can be excited about sports, one sport. You can be excited about one sport all year round, and they will be, because they're dumping marketing dollars, especially the bigger sports. You can be consumed with the NFL year round and not miss a Sunday, certainly not miss the Super Bowl, not miss the draft, not miss whatever, the summer, whatever they call that camp, like be aware of what's going on year round. And I'm using that as an example because that's what happens when you don't have your own vision. It's not that aren't things to get caught up in. And there are probably things that are even more beneficial than football. Like your church is always probably going to have things you could be a part of, where it's like, hey, Sunday and then midweek and then, Saturday, this organization, this ministry. And when you're there in the moment, you're like, this is the thing, this is the thing, this is the thing. And then a year can go by and you're like, wait a second, was that what was best for our family? And so when you are able to step back and get a little bit more clarity for how you feel the Lord can really use your family in a unique way, then it is really empowering to start saying no to those things and say, you know what, like, yeah, we actually don't need to go to that event. That doesn't actually propel us in the direction that we want to go. Okay, real quick. If you're looking for music lessons for your family, piano lessons, guitar lessons, fiddle lessons, ukulele lessons, mandolin lessons, you can subscribe to Voteberg Music Academy and get lessons for the whole family. Subscribe to the piano course, one subscription, get you piano lessons for the whole family. Subscribe to guitar, that gets you guitar lessons for the whole family. We'll link it below. You get a special discount, and you can see that below by listening to our podcast. That's how you get the discount. Go check it out.
Yeah, another thing that we do is once, just along these same lines, is once we start fleshing out what we do want to fill our year with and filling our calendar with, I feel like there are things that, popped up on last year's calendar that we were able to rule out for going forward. But then there's also things that maybe Elisha and I will put a passion project or a hobby or a vision on a dream board or discuss it and be like, hey, this is what I'd love for this year. And it's something we're able to talk through and be like, oh, that is not something that I would like to pursue as a family this year. Or I think that you're all the time that's going to take to go into this project, I don't think this is the year for it. And so to give you guys a couple examples, one thing that was really hard for us, which might sound silly, was saying no at the time. This was from events that came up on our calendar to any event that the network marketing company we were a part of was putting on. And we decided we are going to say no to every single one of these in-person events for our marriage, for our family, for everything. And it's really hard because they call up and say, hey, you have $5,000 in a free trip to X, Y, and Z. And we were able to look at each other and be like, well, it sounds really tempting, but we were so clear last year that was not serving our goals. And so we can say no in the moment. So that was something that cropped up in the past.
We succeeded because in 2023, we went to a couple events. Well, we were doing less and less basically from.
Well, we made this decision, I think, in around like 2020. We said no to everything 2020, 2021, 2022. And then we changed our minds in 2023 or something like that. There were a couple years we said no.
We didn't do any events?
We didn't do anything.
Well, because I mean, those years you just mentioned, I can remember like we went to Florida. We went to Hawaii. Yeah.
Oh, so I'm off on that. Okay.
I think I think there was years where it's like we're not doing anything except maybe those trips, like the trips that are paid for.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe
something like that.
Maybe that.
But then
was
I even think of when I went to convention in Nashville.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
you're right.
So
there were certain events where we said we aren't going to this. Like we aren't doing convention or we aren't doing
retreat. Yeah, exactly. But I do think unless I'm totally off, I think because I know even 2020 we went to an event that year.
You're right. You're right.
So I think 2024 was the first year since starting with our company that we didn't go to an in-person event. And that was something that, again, like we like the events. The events are fun. Like some of our best friends and family favorite family members are at these events. But when we were able to get clarity on the direction of our family, basically they would have been really easy to say yes to. Because they pop up, and you're kind of like, that actually sounds awesome. Like, let's go. But because we had that clarity at the beginning of the year, we were able to really have each other's back and being like, nope, not this year. You know, like just let's follow through with this year and not doing it.
And like Elisha said, it was more than just going to the event and the time that it would take to be at the event. We realized we'd be really derailed, and we don't see ourselves being long-term network marketing, for instance, being the thing that we want to pour our heart and soul into. But when we go to these events, we get all fired up about it. And we would want to. And we're like, hey, are you kidding? This is like our family's involved in this. Our friends are. This is a blast. Let's go for it. And then we get home and be like, whoa. Like we actually have these other goals for our family and our ministry and business and everything. And this just doesn't fit. And we keep getting derailed thinking this is it.
Well, because here's the deal. If somebody's going to the length to putting on an event's a ton of work. We've only done micro events in person, and they were the hardest things we've done since being, entrepreneurs. And so if somebody's going to the length to put on an event, it is like the most important thing to them. And so of course it's going to be presented in that light. And it's so hard to not think when you're at an event, whether it's a Christian conference or whether it's a, mother-daughter retreat or a women's retreat, a men's retreat, fill in the blank, a business conference. You're like, I would do it, when I would go to Strategic Coach once a quarter. Be like, this is what we need. This is the most important thing because it's the most important thing to the people putting it on. That's why they're devoting this much time and energy and money to it. And so I think it does take a lot of discernment to be able to go listen to enthusiasts, to experts, to these champions of various things, and have the self-control to say, we are going to take this from it because this is really, because there's something that's very helpful at all those things I just mentioned, right? That's why you're going there. Whether it benefits your health, your business, your relationships, it encourages you in your faith. You can take, you're there for a reason, right? But then to have the self-control to be like, I know what this means for me and my family. And it's going to be different than the family up on stage that's putting this whole thing on, that has devoted their year to making this event, world class. I can benefit from it, but then go apply it to my life.
Yeah. And I mean, we are huge fans of going to in-person events though for that reason, because the flip side is if you need momentum in a certain direction,
yes,
go to an event, like go to a marriage conference, go to a family conference, go to something where you're going to continue your education, and it's going to give you some massive momentum charging out of that event towards your goal.
Yeah.
So,
but it's so funny. And we have matured in this because the first Weekend to Remember conference we went to in Central Oregon, we had been married for, I think a year. Yeah.
This is embarrassing. I think I was pregnant with Leon or Lucy.
Okay. Well, we had been married around a year, I'd say.
Year or two.
And,
right.
And we went to a Weekend to Remember conference. Family Life puts those on. And, we were like, we went and they had this like, hey, if you're interested in volunteering and working with, we're like, this is life changing. We were so encouraged. We loved being there in the environment. And we went and started the process of working with Family Life as part of their support team, for a Weekend to Remember. And then we were like sitting in the information little, workshop that they had, and there was like 10 other people there. And we were there for like an hour. We're like, what are we doing? Like we have a whole life that this is not, but we were just
We've been
so
married for 5 minutes.
Pumped about what they were doing. We're like, yes, we want to join you in this endeavor. And so, but that's not to say you shouldn't go to marriage conferences. We love going to marriage conferences.
Yeah. So anyways, that's one example. Another example though, that actually came up would be future things. So almost every single year I come to Elisha and I say, I want to put on a in-person event this year. And we're able to talk about it at the beginning of the year, look at our calendar, and so far it hasn't fit. So we're able to write a clear no on, hey, we aren't going to be doing that this year. Really simple things, again, are like swim lessons or something like that. This year, it was great. We did 2 weeks. We looked at the money spent and the time spent and where the kids progressed swim-wise. It's like, you know what? That's a no for us this year. Mm-hmm. So when it comes around and all the kids' friends are doing it and all my friends are doing it, and it's going to be this big social time, I know, hey, we identified beforehand pros and cons, and this is something we weighed out. So it could be with really big things. It could be with really little things. Mm-hmm. It could be with things that you haven't even done or attempted yet, and you're able to be like, this is not the year for that, considering everything else that we have going on. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that's what we do. And then we fill in, to the best of our knowledge, our calendar.
Yes. That's always sobering.
It's very sobering. You see how little time you actually have to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Because right now, when we pull out a 2025 calendar and we start filling in, okay, and you do those crucials that you want to hold to for your family, a weekly Sabbath, boom, that day's blocked out. And then we go, okay, let's do a date night. Whenever we want to do the date night, let's block those out. Okay, how many weddings do we know of? I mean, I think so far 4.
Well, I know of 5 in the first 4 months of the year.
Yeah, 5 that was like, well, we want to go to all, we want to be a part of all these. Okay, let's put them on the calendar. And then you think, okay, well, what are these annual events, that our family is a part of, whether it's music camps or family camps, family reunions,
holidays.
Yeah,
just
exactly. The holidays.
Knowing ahead of time. Okay, where are we spending
Easter
4th of July? Where are we spending Easter? Are we hosting? Are we traveling?
Yep.
Whose side of the family are we going to? Some of these things are set in stone as annual things for some families. And for some like us, it changes, and it might change too on a more minor holiday basis. So like 4th of July or Mother's Day or stuff like that. And then we're able to communicate with family earlier on what our plan is for those holidays too.
Yes. Yeah. We write down our anniversary. We write down birthdays on there, our kids' birthdays. And it is, like I said, it is sobering. You're like, whoa, that's a full year. Now, what's cool is that we usually love those things. And we're like, well, this is going to be awesome. What a fun year so far when we look at all these things we get to, Lord willing, be a part of. And then it really helps you when you start going through that list of, is this a absolute yes or not? Because when the year is your oyster, when the world's your oyster, or the years, when you're like, 2025 was a blank slate. You're like, man, like if something sounds kind of fun, then why wouldn't you say yes to that? Whereas when you fill in your calendar and you start realizing, man, 60% of our weekends are, kind of accounted for, right? Or we got a trip here. We're going across the country for this. And you start realizing, well, I don't know if we'll want to do many more cross-country trips this year. And so it would have to be a really good opportunity to get us back on an airplane as a family, taking us back east. And so when you're able to have that sobriety and how your year's filled out, I think it does give you a lot more self-control.
Yes. And my mom always said, if you don't plan your time, someone else will plan it for you. And so as much as you can, fill in times. And, I don't know. It's so much easier said than done, but as many big things as you can put on the calendar, put on as soon as possible in the beginning of the year. And also events that so hold on. I'm getting into a couple other things. Yeah. So then we do our dream boards, just talking out our dream boards. So both Elisha and I do this separately, but then we do come together and talk about it. And usually this is just while they're on paper. And it's kind of like, hey, this is the general direction I want to go with this and this and this and this. I wrote down some categories here. Personally, with the children, trips, hobbies, work, current commitments we already have, friendships, extended family, extracurriculars, family rhythms-wise, education, continuing education for either of us or the kids, health, marriage, hospitality, our faith, different big purchases we want to make that year. So anyways, all these things, kind of writing down a general list and briefing each other on that list, seeing if we're on the same page with that list, before going out and finding pictures for that thing. Yeah. And then we'll go individually find pictures, like Elisha said, that inspire us. But talking out goals for the year, we just did this last week, and I feel like there were different things where it was like, oh, I don't know about that, where we were both kind of at odds with where time and energy was going to go. Yeah. And it's easier to discuss that early on before you get super invested in a project, or it's like, oh, I just assumed this is what I was going to do, or what we were going to do with the kids. And Elisha would have input like, oh, I don't really want to head that direction with the kids, or, whatever the case may be. Yeah. Obviously in marriage, the more that's communicated, oftentimes just the more opportunity there's for clarity. Right. And so when we're at the beginning of the year, you're able to say, hey, I really want to train for this race, or I really want to be able to go to this event. And I'm able to say, this, 2024, I did not make the amount of gains I wanted to. And, this in jiu-jitsu, I'd really like to put more time into that. These are personal things, right? And so it's nice to talk about those ahead of time. So I'm not blindsided when you're like, hey, I'm meeting so-and-so and we're going for a run. It all adds up. It's like, that's right. We talked about this. Of course, you're putting time into running. And it's not that you would do that against the benefit of our family or the health of our family, and vice versa with whatever, like physical goals I want to accomplish, or fitness goals I want to attain for the year. It's nice when I say them because we're on the same page when an opportunity arises. And it's just kind of like, hey, this black belt's doing a seminar in town. This would fit into that category if it works. This would be a fun seminar to attend. And you're like, that's right. That totally makes sense. That's something he actually cares about for the year. And it's less of this kind of like withdrawal from the family when it's communicated up front. Yeah. I love how you said that, because oftentimes we will put things on the calendar on the dream board, I should say, that can't go on a calendar. Like Elisha and I wanted our children to get better at swimming this year. We had no clue what that was going to actually look like. Like, are we taking them to a park? Are we going to the rec center? Are we signing up? And then this opportunity happened for swim lessons that a friend presented, and we both jumped on it. It was really expensive and it was a big time commitment. And we were both like, yes, absolutely. Very clear. The kids need to get better at swimming. We don't have any better opportunities. We're doing that this year. So it gets you primed for when those opportunities come by to either say, hey, no, like joining a chess team wasn't something that we really valued for our child this year, but we put down art lessons as something that we wanted them to grow into. So when that opportunity came by, we took that one and we said no to the other one. Yeah. So it can just help weigh opportunities as they come past. And like Elisha said, it doesn't seem as volatile in the moment, like your spouse is just jumping on, especially or like with big purchases.
Yes.
Same thing. There's like, okay, these are the purchases I would like to make for our home this year. It's not like willy-nilly, like, why did you go out and buy all these couches or whatever? It's like we wrote on the calendar, we would like to buy a new car this year, or we would like to get new couches this year, or whatever the case may be. So when a sale comes up, we jump on it and we both feel good, like we thought about this before. So it can make you make better spontaneous decisions.
Yes.
Because they were pre-planned.
They were, pre-planned spontaneity. Well, actually, that's actually a good way to put it, because spontaneity is a part of life, meaning there's going to be opportunities that spontaneously present themselves. And so the more clear you were ahead of time on what your objectives were for that year, the more confidence you can have in saying yes or no to those spontaneous opportunities. Because I know there's like 1,000 quotes around this, but when you say when you say yes to too many good things, you're saying no to the great things, or, good is the enemy of great, or something like that. I think I blew both those quotes, but the idea is because of we're blessed between now and next year, there's going to be more good opportunities than we've got the capacity to say yes to. And I would say that's true for most families, where it's the number of opportunities that you have through your church, through your families, through work, through just opportunities serving in your local community. There's going to be an abundance, right? There's going to be a surplus of opportunities. And so it's incumbent upon us, when we're in these moments of clarity, to have those clear objectives, so that it's so obvious when that opportunity presents itself that it serves that purpose. I mean, and the silly examples, I think back to, I think it was 2021 when you and I both wanted to get better at defending ourselves, protecting ourselves. That's when I started training a lot more jiu-jitsu. You started doing that hand-to-hand combat class. We went and signed up for a spy seminar in Las Vegas. We went to a knife fighting workshop
on our anniversary. That was a very fun year. That was like, we were totally aligned in our hobbies.
And we knew when those opportunities presented themselves, we're like, well, yeah, these were on the dream board. Like, this is an obvious yes. And that was for that year, right? It was fun having that type of clarity when we were saying yes and investing money. And I want that every year for our family, when we're saying yes to something, for there to be this enthusiasm behind it, because we've thought it all through and we know whether or not it's aligned with our core values. Yeah.
Something that's really big for us this year is actually not having any big crazy changes as opposed to 2024. And really just buckling down and having more rhythms in our week. And so Elisha talked about, having our Sabbath on Saturday, having a date night consistently, because it's been something we've been the least consistent on that this year due to living situation. Hospitality, that's something that we've been the least consistent on this year. And so we wrote in a ideal week of rhythm, and what that rhythm would look like for a family on Fridays, and what that would look like. And so that can be helpful too, even having a North Star when it comes to your ideal week. And it's like, because going back to your identity as a family, it's the things that you do on a weekly basis. And so is there time in your week for the weekly things? Something that we want as an identity in our family is 3 to 4 nights of a family routine at the dinner table and afterwards that our kids look back on and remember. And so because we know that, sometimes filling out your whole year is one thing to take away some time. But if you really want to prioritize and know what you're saying no to when you say yes to something, fill out your week as an ideal. And you realize, oh, if we say yes to Johnny's extracurricular, there goes another evening. And if we say yes to this home group and that women's ministry and this men's night,
the father-son of ministry, whatever. Yeah.
This is like our challenge right now. I feel like with so many good things and trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually protect the evenings of our week while still adding in those evenings that we do really value? And then we're able to sit down knowing that 3 to 4 nights out of our week are taken and say, okay, now we're going to make a decision on these extra evening things. Which ones are we saying no to? And which ones are we saying yes to? Instead of being like, sure, those all sound great. And we just said no to something that we valued more, which was a date night or our kids having memories here at home.
Yeah.
So anyways, stuff like that, knowing when we're going to have people over for dinner, what are good days for us during the week, and knowing, okay, again, if we're saying yes to some other opportunity that crops up, that's going to push out hospitality for us in these ways. So the more you can do that, again, Elisha and I are actually very spontaneous people. I think that's why we talk about schedule so much. It's because we need it in our lives. So you can always break away from a schedule or a rhythm or whatever the case may be, but it's something to come back to. It's a value system that you're able to come back to when you do get out of whack, and you're able to look back and be like, oh yeah, this was something that we thought was ideal. Do we still think it's ideal? Okay, well, how do we get back to that?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And even, and we'll wrap up here, but it's nice that even when we look back and say, okay, some of these weekly rhythm things fell by the wayside this past year, and they were because of other things we had put on because of other intentional decisions we put at the beginning. Basically, we don't feel like we are the victim to outside. We felt we lived a very on purpose year, is what I'm saying. And it's because of what we planned last year were big life events. Yeah, like you said, we didn't plan living in a tent, but we did plan selling our home. We did plan starting the build of the barn on our property and developing that property. And those things right there lent to a lot more logistical changes than what we had predicted. But the reason we were making the logistical changes were for things that we could really stand by. And that was really helpful in some of the more stressful moments throughout, living in the tent or, trying to sell our house and do repairs and, having showings on a regular basis. We could both look back to the beginning of the year and remember that in a moment of clarity, in a moment of objectivity, we were united in saying, no, this is something that we wanted to do. So that when we were developing the property and spending way more money than we were comfortable doing, it's like, wait a second, we were going to do this. We wanted to do this year. And we were able to be united in that. And it prevented a lot of, not that you should ever blame your spouse, but it's nice when you eliminate any potential even ammunition for that, to be able to be like, no, we decided together that this is what we wanted to do. And yeah, the collateral damage or the collateral effect was greater than what we anticipated, but it was for something that we had committed to, which was really comforting by the end of the year. And it was sobering because it made us realize, oh, you can bite off more than you can chew. And we've done that before. And I think we did it a couple times this year. And so we really want to be vigilant in protecting those weekly rhythms and not saying yes to these big things that have the potential and likelihood of kicking you off those weekly routines.
Yeah, when you have those really big goals, you don't know what kind of sacrifice it's going to require from you. And so we didn't know, but we were willing to make whatever the sacrifice was, as long as it wasn't, our faith, marriage, or our kids. Yeah. Like really, we were willing to go to great lengths to get the big projects done.
Yep.
And this year we're seeing, okay, and often we do have these. If we look back on our year, we kind of have these years that are in response to the year before, which is, I think, a healthy thing. And so we're able to look back and be like, you know what? We're going to actually really hone in on our family rhythm, and any big thing that is going to be an incredible opportunity, but take us off this rhythm that we see as being helpful, that's not the goal of the year.
Yep.
Like, that's how we're going to weed out those opportunities. Are we able to fit them in the cracks while we're still doing all these things that we would like to do? Or is it going to require a drastic life change from us, like moving to Japan? Because if that's the case, we aren't doing that this year. The Lord has his plans again, but this is what we feel like he's calling us to at this time after seeking him and praying. And this is something too, I don't want to take for granted on the podcast that you guys, I know we've mentioned this before, but we are Christians first and foremost. We are seeking the Lord. Prayer is a part of this whole process, individually, together, hearing our children's hearts, praying with them, and obviously having really open hands, considering what the Lord wants for the year, being open to him changing that. And seeking him for wisdom. This isn't just us looking at the stats and being like, okay, this is what we're going to do in our own man's wisdom.
Yeah, once again, I think the more clarity you could have in your preparation makes it all the easier, I think, to be united when the Lord's leading. Because if you've accounted for all your money and you're thinking, this is where we want to invest this, if we have any savings, we want to put it towards this, and then you're both prompted to give to somebody, it's really fun to have that confidence of like, oh, this is totally the Lord leading us in this moment, because we were so clear on where we wanted our money to go. And so it should be the same way with all of our plans. The more clarity you have planning your ways, it's actually easier to trust the Lord when he's directing your steps. To be like, wow, like this is almost in the opposite direction in which we had committed to going to for the year, but we both feel so aligned that this is where the Lord's leading us. That can be really nice to have that type of clarity.
Yeah, instead of wondering if you're just an emotional person, saying yes to everything that comes down to your path. So anyways, that is how we plan our year. I know there's a lot of like little steps that go into it, little conversations. It's kind of like a conversation for all of December, I feel like. But it has really helped. I mean, we've gotten clearer and clearer and clearer every single year. And I joke that, well, we both do, you have to be careful we're taking it more and more seriously because of how effective this has been for us.
Yes.
And it's like, well, we do aim what we're hitting for.
We hit what we aim.
We hit. Yeah. We hit what we're aiming at.
Well, it's fun sometimes we say we were aiming at what we hit too. That's always a good way to, set yourself up for success.
The majority of the time, or we get close, and it's always at the expense of other things. And so that's why you want to treat this so soberly, is because you can't have it all. Yeah. Whatever happens is going to be at the expense of something else. And so, again, really seeking the Lord for what is that, and really protecting the things that you don't want it to be at the expense of. Because, we've just lived quite a few years now where it's uncanny when we look at, wow, we hit those goals.
Yes, exactly. It's uncanny.
But it's very exciting too.
It is exciting.
I mean, it's motivating. Like, we aren't going to not plan a year now.
Yes, exactly. Because we love the things that we hit. We're like, no way.
We do. It's
we wrote that down 3 years ago, and here we are 3 years later, experiencing it. So,
and something to remember with the bigger projects that we tell each other all the time, and it's a quote from someone smart, and that is, there are no unrealistic goals, just unrealistic timelines. Is that Dan Sullivan?
Yeah, I think it's Dan Sullivan. Yeah.
So there's no unrealistic goals, just unrealistic timelines. The majority of the time we hit our, I put in air quote, goals like 3 months after we thought we were going to hit them.
That's right.
And so we have to tell ourselves, this is not a failure. We made progress.
Exactly.
Measure backwards. We made progress. And it's very natural to not hit the exact goal you were aiming at, but you got closer to it.
Yep.
And it still feels really good when you hit it 3 months later.
Yep.
For us, I feel like that's like our consistent.
Yeah, we wanted to
lapse.
we wanted to be living in our barn in 2024.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking, oh well, we missed that goal. It's going to be, however
it's never going to happen.
However much later. But if you just focus on that, you actually you miss out on the fact that the barn's actually, for me, 5 times cooler than I thought it ever would be.
That's true.
I mean, I'm just kind of like, whoa, this is so cool. The building is remarkable. I'm really excited about it. I love the property more than I thought I was going to love it. And so it is, yeah, it's like, well, you missed the timeline, but you got way closer in a project that's way cooler than you even realized.
Exactly. So anyways.
Yeah. Folks, we'd love to hear what you do to plan your year for your family. Katie and I are kind of, self-help junkies. And so if you guys have any tips or hacks or fun little exercises you do with what you do with your spouse, we'd love to hear about it, or for yourself. Anyways, talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.